Hey everybody, this is Chris Thompson, and welcome to session number 33 of Brain Software with Dr. Mike Mandel. He's recently become a fan of bulletproof coffee. He's the inventor of the kids' games, Mr. Floyd, and stars of the Titanic, and he's got a birthday coming up. Here he is, ladies and gentlemen, the king of confusion, the master of metaphor, Dr. Mike Mandel.
Yes, Chris, here we are. We're laughing because this is actually about our 14th take this morning. I just haven't been in the zone, but now I am, and we are enjoying bulletproof coffee as I speak. My brain is running at full gear, as is Chris's, and we are ready for the podcast of the day. Broadcasting, podcasting, speaking to you from Toronto, Canada, the Omphalos, the navel of global hypnosis. Yes, it's a good one. Make sure you say that one correctly or you send the wrong impression. And we are going to be speaking to you about a wide variety of things, including memory today. But Chris, on the intro you had, I noticed you said about the kids' games. Now, clearly, it might be my wife who told you about that. But the two kids' games, Mr. Floyd and Stars of the Titanic. I also invented one called Psychopath and one called Tomb of the Dead.
Oh, you didn't tell me about
those. Oh, no, these go back
ones.
to my childhood. But Stars of the they never made the cut, but Stars of the Titanic and Mr. Floyd are perennial favorites with kids. And I have played them. I played them when I was a kid, and now play them with my great nieces, Jade, Emma, and Rebecca, who are my nephew's kids. And Stars of the Titanic, I'll tell you in a nutshell, is a really cool game. Basically, you get a bunch of kids, little kids, on a bunk bed, and you pretend it's one of the lifeboats, the Titanic. And I'm generally the poor Irish passenger in steerage, the low end of the ship, down by the propellers in the engine rooms. And the ship has already sunk, and we're being jostled around. And I'm swimming across the room trying to get in the lifeboat. And I have coached these little girls in how to gash my hands with their diamond bracelets to stop me from climbing in the lifeboat because they're from first class. We just have a blast with this stuff.
That is really twisted, but hilarious.
I think they quite enjoy it. Keep the steerage passengers out. Gash, gash, gash.
All right. What was the strange word you used in the beginning of the podcast?
Omphalos?
Omphalos. What does that mean?
Strange to you, perhaps.
Yes.
Omphalos, I believe it's Latin. It might be Greek. It's just navel, from which we get the word omphaloskepsis, which is navel gazing.
All right. So that brings up an interesting segue into the topic, because we're going to be talking about memory today. Now, it always fascinates me where you get these words that most people don't know and that you remember them. But we're going to talk about memory today, aren't we?
Yes, we are, Chris. We're going to what?
We're going to...
We're comic
It reminds me of the
There's
podcast where you
joke.
did that to me, and we said, he often pretends he's deaf. And he said, what?
What? I know, it's great. My brother-in-law said to me once, the reason I don't like teaching guitar is I can't stand repeating myself. I said, what? And he just said the whole thing. Brilliant.
Okay, so we're going to talk about memory. This is a topic that I know Mike is very passionate about. In fact, you have a CD called Memory Power that you created many, many years ago.
I did.
It's still an awesome product, so we're going to
Also available as a download.
Yeah, and we're going to talk about a lot of the content that's on that CD today. And of course, if you want to get a copy of it, you can go to the website, MikeMandelHypnosis.com. Now, so what are we going to cover in terms of memory? I forgot.
Well, I mean, we will get to that. We just want to, did you want to pre-frame that? You know, you did mention I have a birthday coming up. Before you pre-frame anything,
yes.
Let me just mention this. I have a very significant birthday coming up. We will not mention the number, but let's just say that there will be a party, drop-in, hang about for friends, colleagues, etc., at an undisclosed location in Toronto. Some of you know it already and have agreed to attend. We already have martial artists coming, a former SAS soldier, man who has the Order of Canada. I mean, it's just fabulous. They're coming out of the woodwork to be part of this, and I know you'll be there, Chris. Listen, if you are listening to this and it is pre-April 28th Sunday, which I'm sure it is, realize these are recorded in advance, so I'm not 100% sure when this will go online, but Chris would know.
Before then.
Right. If you were supposed to be there or think you need to be there because you have some connection to me and did not get an invite, which has been a hilarious one in an email attachment, but if you did not get an invite and think you should be there, email me through the website and we'll make sure that your name is on the guest list and we can get you past security.
Which will be me and other people, so...
Yeah, we're not letting Hypnosis.
It's going to be difficult to get now. Okay. All right.
So memory, Chris.
Yeah, let's talk about what we're going to talk about in terms of memory.
Well, we're going to just basically show how memory functions and what you can do, a few things you can do nutritionally and so on to improve your memory, and also techniques you can use to make your memory much, much stronger and more effective. And I think it's vitally important that we're constantly stimulating our brains and ensuring that we are learning new things. The reason we start with approximately 1 trillion neurons, but nobody's ever counted, is we are supposed to put something in them. Mm-hmm. And I'm going to show you how to put things things in your brain and make them stick.
I think this is an important topic. I'm not finished the book yet, but I'm reading the book Moonwalking with Einstein. My neighbor lent it to me.
You recommended that to me, and I should give that a read.
I think you'll really enjoy it, but you probably already know all the stuff that's in it.
I
But
don't know about that.
here's one little thing. The author's name,
Ottawa.
His name is Joshua, and I mixed Ottawa.
Yeah.
The author's name is Joshua, I believe, Foer, F-O-E-R, if I'm spelling it correctly. I hope I am. Anyway, he made an interesting comment that memory is getting worse in people because of things like electronics. You know, here we are with our to-do lists and our Siri-powered phones that, you know, can do anything for us. And as a result, we don't need to remember that many things. So we start getting worse at it.
Become dependent upon these things. And Chris, there's a certain degree of truth that is obvious to anybody in this. When we depend upon electronic devices and time savers, and I'm a newcomer to this because I carried a flip phone for years. I've only just upgraded to the remarkable iPhone 5 recently. No commercial. But what I've noticed is it has organized my life immeasurably, but I am now bound to it if I lose it or if it gets broken or, God forbid, you know, we have an EMP, an electromagnetic pulse. All this information is going to go down. I will have no access to it. And even when I started using my Garmin, what's the word?
Nuvi 350, I think it was.
Scary that my memory was gone. The GPS, when I originally got it, I started using it to go to the store. I mean, it was such a joy to use. But now I've become completely dependent upon the GPS. And it is incumbent upon us to continuously stretch our brains, give them more things to do, more things to remember. Now, when you said that because of the influx and proliferation of electrical devices, electronic devices that save our minds the trouble, whether it's even just a pocket calculator as opposed to working something out on paper, it does cause our brains to atrophy to a degree. We get negative plasticity happening where we start to lose neural connections, which is not a good place to be in. But there's the other aspect too, Chris. People talk about the fact that we are awash in electrical fields all the time now. Well, you and I are sitting here in our massive studio just steps away from the University of Toronto, the very epicenter of global hypnosis, surrounded by so many computer monitors it looks like NASA in here. And electrical signals coming in from lights and power lines, but we really are surrounded by electromagnetic flux all the time. And there's a belief that that too is affecting the brains, which are electrochemical in nature. And when you have something as small as a neuron, it is entirely possible that there would be some sort of resonance. In any case, it's been well documented that when we get a significant power outage, like the Northeast one from about 8 years ago, I think in August, remember, the U.S. blamed it on Canada.
Yeah, 2008.
We blamed it on them. They blamed it on us. I don't think anyone ever figured it out. But what happened was it was about 3 days long, and a hush fell over communities. There was no radio, no TV, nothing. But not only was there no electronic background noise, but there was no electronic background radiation coming from all these supplementary sources. People found it relaxing. People found that they felt calmer, and it's quite an astounding thing. So maybe there is that aspect affecting our memories too. I'm not 100% sure of that.
Okay, so let's get on with the discussion of all kinds of cool techniques that people can learn from you because you've done so much of this over the years. But before we do, I want to quickly mention that July 8th to 12th, so that's a 5-day Monday to Friday course. We're doing a 5-day intensive Architecture of Hypnosis course. We've already started getting student signups. It's here in Toronto again. And we don't know when we're doing the next 5-day one. We haven't figured it out quite yet. But
right. If you want to do 5 days in a row, Monday to Friday, if you're coming from out of town, out of province, out of country, international students, this is a great one to come to because you can fly in on a weekend, train with us all week, and go back the following weekend, get a better airfare rate, better hotel rate, and just do Monday to Friday intensive studying with us.
Right. So that's coming up. Keep in mind, if you want to be in on that class, go to mikemandelhypnosis.com/class.
One final point, Chris. This isn't a commercial, but these courses always sell out. April has been long sold out. This one will sell out too. So please don't send me an email like other people do saying, I didn't get in on it. Why didn't I get in? Well, you didn't sign up. If you want to come out, sign up and we'll get you in the course.
Now, the next thing I want to mention quickly, and this is early in the planning stages, but for a long time now, people have been asking Mike to run a handwriting analysis course. We have now set the date for that. It will be on a Saturday, September 7th. It will also be in Toronto. It's a 1-day course. If this is not the long weekend. This is not the Labor Day long weekend for Canadians. Do Americans celebrate? Yeah, I couldn't remember if they did. Well, it's a good thing we're talking about memory. It is not the Labor Day long weekend, which would be the weekend before that, Monday, September 2nd, I believe it is a holiday. So anyway, this is happening the weekend following Labor Day, one day. It's going to have wider appeal than hypnosis because handwriting analysis is something so many people are interested in. Limited seating. Email us if you want to get on the early bird list. I will collect all the emails that I get from you, info@mikemandelhypnosis.com, and then I will make sure I open it up to people who have emailed us first before opening it to the regular public.
And this will have broad appeal. If you're a therapist or a hypnotherapist or a psychologist, you'll be able to use this with your patients or clients and determine all sorts of things. I've used it forensically. I've used it for numerous police services, and this is the real deal. It isn't some fluffy sort of New Age thing. Notice I'm saying New Age pronunciation.
Yeah, New Age.
Some of it gets a bit odd. This is scientific handwriting analysis that will work in the real world.
I thought it was interesting when you told me that this is actually mainstream in Europe.
Yes, 80% of organizations, big corporations in Europe, use handwriting analysis graphology for hiring or job placement and even firing in some cases. And you can even study it at the Sorbonne and at the University of Heidelberg, I believe.
So just like in North America, Myers-Briggs is so common for personality typing.
Right.
Okay, cool. All right, let's get on with the memory stuff. So why don't we start out, Mike?
Let's look at the nutritional aspect of this first. Now, remember, I'm not prescribing for you. I'm not telling you to do any of this when it comes to, taking or not taking anything. I'm only telling you what I do. In order to strengthen my brain, because it is my intention to always be learning, and with sufficient brain cells that are intact, one can continue to do so for the length of one's life, provided you live to be less than about 7,000, I think. So one of the things you want to do is make sure the nutritional aspect is being met. And the most important thing you can be putting in your brain is the omega-3 essential fatty acids, the omega-3s, which are found primarily in fish oil. Now, some people take flax oil, but flax oil really is a precursor. I think your body has to then mutate it, change it, transform it into omega-3, much the way it turns beta-carotene into vitamin A. Mm-hmm. So instead, if you get the pure form of omega-3 in fish oil, and there's some great products out there, most of them are from Norway. I used to recommend one particularly, but I'm looking into another one that I think is now superior. And basically, this is your building blocks for neural pathways. There's huge amounts of glutamate in your brain, and there's massive amounts of omega-3. Don't fall for the trap. If you determine to take this to buy omega-3, 6, and 9, you're already getting 14 to 16 times too much omega-6 in your diet already. You're getting sufficient omega-9. It's the 3 you need to supplement for your brain. My mom used to say when I was a kid, eat your salmon there, lad. That's brain food. Of course, I thought she was insane. It turns out she was correct. And if you're taking a bit of this omega-3 every day, you're getting the efficient... what's the word I'm looking for?
I don't know. I forgot. No.
If you're taking, let me get a run at it.
Let's
if you're
edit that
taking
out.
this, we'll edit that out. If you're taking this omega-3 every day, you're getting the equivalent of about probably a couple of pounds of salmon, organic salmon a week. So it really will strengthen your brain. And you'll notice the difference in as little as 1 month if you do this. I'm not telling you to. I'm only telling you I did it and do it.
Speaking of salmon and fish, I think it'd be interesting here to point out for a lot of the people who may not know this, that a lot of the fish that you buy in the grocery store is farmed. And salmon in particular, mostly these high-volume fishes, the fish that we all... Did I say fishes as if that was the...
It's still correct.
Okay. The fish that we tend to buy, if it's farmed, the stuff that's so common is almost always farmed, unless it says wild. Farmed salmon isn't pink. I read some articles on this. Ryan was explaining this to us as well. They dye it. That fish, if they don't add dye to it, it's gray. It does not contain the same amount of nutrition.
No. You want to get as close to wild as possible.
Avoid farmed fish.
Yeah, in Toronto, we have a wonderful fish store called Diana's that supplies the restaurants. They get fresh fish 7 days a week, and there I buy wild organic Irish salmon, and it's absolutely fantastic. Anyway, so you want to take in omega-3s if you're planning on doing this. That's what I do. The other thing I take is Ginkgo Biloba, and ginkgo is one of the oldest trees on earth. It's extremely hardy and resistant to pollution. It comes from the Far East, and ginkgo extracts will improve the circulation and the oxygenation of your brain. Your brain needs oxygen and it needs glucose. Your brain is a glucose hog. And if you don't get sufficient food, your brain starts to break down your muscles ahead of the fat even, because your brain will use the glucose that is developed when the muscles break down to power itself. So that's why it's really important that you ensure you're getting sufficient protein in your diet, because without protein, you can't get glucose. And your brain will use the Ginkgo Biloba supplements. The best is a liquid form, a tincture and extract, and I take it a couple of times a day under the tongue, half a dropper full, and that ensures the brain stays robust and clever so that as one ages, one does not sound like one has aged. So that's a good one. The other thing you really need to look into is if you want to keep mentally sharp, there is no substitute for exercise. If you stop exercising, stop getting oxygen to your brain will gradually continue to atrophy. So you have to keep your brain oxygenated, fed glucose, and sound in omega-3 fatty acids. If you do this, you're giving your brain a head start over much of the population.
Right, and just like the body, the same goes with the brain. If you are not growing, you are dying. So if you're not using that brain to learn something new and exciting and keep yourself interested, you're dying.
Right. I mean, we know now that you start with about 1 trillion neurons, and it's just a guess. Each one can connect to up to 150,000 other neurons through neural pathways. Now, if you do get new neurons, we now know through neurogenesis you get a few new neurons, but compared to the number you have, they really are just a handful. So you should assume that the ones you get are pretty well all you're getting, because that's essentially the case if you look at the numbers. But neurons are not robust. That's why head injuries tend to be cumulative. You do not want to get hit in the head. Boxers, if you'll notice, do not get smarter as they continue to box. They tend to go from speaking like I'm speaking to you now, and after their 15 professional fights, they become very, very troglodytic. Adrian. Yes. So look after the nutritional and the oxygenation aspect. Also, water. Your body needs pure, fresh water all the time to flush out toxins. Your brain needs it too. That's one of the reasons hangovers, of which, of course, I've never had even one. The reason hangovers are so horrendous, one of the reasons is your brain is dehydrated. And that's why when people drink a lot of water before they go to bed, they typically don't have the hangover the next day. The brain has not become dehydrated. Keep your brain well hydrated, so that will help your memory. So this is sort of the nutritional, physiological aspects, the neurology of being smarter and more memorable internally and externally. And we're now going to determine what you can do to actually memorize things.
Yeah, let's talk about it. So I don't know where you want to start.
Well, tell me the one you were mentioning.
Well, just from the Memory Power CD, what occurred to me the very first time I listened to it, it was so powerful because it taught me that, hey, you can remember things without, I can't remember the term for the normal way people try to memorize things, but whatever it is, you just read a list and over, and eventually it just becomes patterned in your mind and you've got the list memorized. But the method that you were talking about on the CD was essentially forming vivid mental images inside your mind's eye of what's going on and associating that somehow to whatever it is you're trying to remember. And then essentially, it's association, right?
All memory is associated.
Right.
You can't memorize anything without a context and without it being attached to something that's already there. So if someone shows you a dollar bill for the first time, which I guess are green in a sense, and they're sort of grayish more than anything in the U.S., but say someone shows you a dollar bill and says, this is a dollar bill, this is money from the United States. Now, your brain will store that, not as a dollar bill money from the United States, but it will store it throughout your brain, throughout your neurology, holographically. So you'll connect it to green, you'll connect it to the concept of money and finance and currency, you'll connect it to the number one, you'll connect it to America, you'll connect it to all of these things, so it becomes accessible in the self-patterning system of the brain. It becomes accessible through any of these inroads. So if someone says currency, you can get to dollar. Right. If they say green, you can get to dollar. Whatever it is, all part of your neural pathways.
In fact, if you play the association game, right, I'll think of a glass. What does that make you think of next? And there you've got water in the glass or wine or whatever it is. But there is always that association, and it's unconscious, right?
It is, yes, to a large degree. Now, if you make the association conscious, it's even more effective.
Right.
Now, since it's all association anyway, associate on purpose. So just saying a list by rote will work.
Rote, that was the term. Thank you.
You forgot it.
Yeah.
But it is far more powerful if you are doing this intentionally. Now, all of this stuff, this is not my own stuff. This is how everybody remembers. I take no credit for this. This is actually the work of Bernard Soufal, who 100 and some odd years ago memorized the Manhattan phone book, including all the phone numbers and all the addresses. Now, admittedly, it was quite a bit smaller then than it is now, but it was still a prodigious feat to memorize something like that. But if you follow these methods, you can very, very easily, the ones I'm going to show you, memorize a 30-digit number hearing it once. It's not hard. And you can also repeat it backwards from memory. It's almost as easy going backwards once you have it. I taught one of my clients to do this, and he taught it to his 9-year-old kid who began acing everything in school. And that's why when I work with clients who meet up with me on Skype and book an appointment on Skype, I typically don't fix things. We're not dealing with phobias, anxieties, all those things. The things I like working with most are generative change. Things people do well, they want to do better. So if they're public speakers, I'll teach them how to memorize better, how they don't have to look at notes, how to get in the zone so they're in a more powerful state when they speak. Athletes doing the same sort of thing. So a good memory system is your friend in every area of life. And I want you to tell me that one before we get into the 2 methods I'm going to teach today, Chris. I want you to tell me that one you were talking about, the grand hallway or some other...
Oh, memory palace.
Oh, yeah.
But that's essentially... Oh, maybe that's not the link method that you're going to talk about. But the memory palace is... I think you talk about this on your memory CD. Maybe you recorded it so long ago you've forgotten. I don't know.
Probably.
But the memory palace is a simple idea of... Let's say you want to remember a to-do list. So you imagine yourself standing outside, let's say your home is your memory palace. And you can have many, I can't even talk, many memory palaces. One could be your home. One could be a neighborhood that you grew up in, or a park that you used to play in, or whatever it is. And you imagine yourself starting at a starting point and placing objects or list items around your memory palace, and you just vividly imagine, to-do list is, I've got to buy milk. Well, you imagine milk, sitting in front of the door to your house, and then you walk in the front door, and the next thing on your list, let's say, is you have to buy fish, salmon specifically, right? So you imagine a little kid's
non-farm
pool,
salmon,
a kid's plastic pool in the lobby of your house with these fish swimming around in it, and just vividly imagine it. That's really strange. Fish in a little pond in the front of my house. That's bizarre. And if you continue through your house and you form mental images of all this stuff very vividly, and the crazier the better. That's the whole point, right? The crazier you make these images, the better they'll be.
Back up for a second, Chris, because you're completely correct on all of this. And this actually goes back to the Roman orators, who, when they would make a speech, oratory was a wonderful thing that was taught how to sway and persuade through speech. And it's not a lost art now. It's essentially being supplanted by propagandists. But in any case, the Roman orator would imagine what was the first thing he saw when he came through the front door of his house, and he would put his first point hanging on that hook or whatever it was, and he'd put the next point of his discussion on the mat into his kitchen or whatever it was, and then he would just walk through his house in his mind to remember everything there. Now, the point you made that is so important is the more vivid and the stranger you make it, what you're basically doing, of course, is we're affecting the NLP submodalities. Mm-hmm. We're affecting the storage of information. And by making it clear and vivid and even bizarre, you're more likely to remember it. And dare I say this on a family podcast, if you're, as Barry Farber taught me, if you're putting a bunch of people in a room and you're trying to remember all these different things, he said, you want to make it vivid? He said, get everybody naked. Oh. He said, bring in an X-rated factor. He said, nobody will notice. It's inside your head anyway. And he said, you will not forget that.
This is so true. And Joshua Foer, in his book Moonwalking with Einstein, talks about this. The mentor that taught him basically gave the same advice. The crazier and the more, in some cases, quite erotic the pictures that you form, these movies that you make, the easier they are to remember because they're so crazy. I mean, they can be crazy in other ways, but it apparently works very well.
It's annoying, though, because then, you're trying to do a memorization of a deck of cards and you keep seeing Megan Fox or something.
Yeah, well, and that's the thing. So when you're doing a deck of cards, in fact, it's often recommended you'll start with celebrities and you'll group the celebrities by suit, right? So all diamonds are going to be, I haven't studied this in detail, but let's say all diamonds are male celebrities or something like that, and singers or actors or whatever. So you end up with, people that connect to you in some way. If you're a big Michael Jackson fan, you're going to want to have Michael Jackson as one of those celebrities. If you're a fan of something else, you're going to change the celebrities.
Okay, let's leave the something else out. Now, you're correct. And making it vivid, clear, bright color, close, changing the submodalities. Now, movement. The easiest way to memorize, movement as well, the easiest way to memorize things is to link them together because that's happening anyway. Mm-hmm. But I want to show you a wonderful peg list that is a very, very quick way of memorizing a list. Now, it's basically, let's do numbers 1 to 10. So everyone listening, number 1 is a gun. 1 sort of rhymes with gun. So you see an old-fashioned 6 gun in some guy's hand with him pulling the trigger and the gun going boom and being fired. Okay, so 1 is gun. It sort of rhymes, so it's easy to do. Number 2 is a shoe. That's correct. It's a shoe.
I remember this.
See, a big, sort of gym shoe or Oxford or whatever it is, one of them with the laces all hanging open, and it's big and smelly, and it's about a size 12. And then 3 is?
Tree.
You do remember. 3 is a tree. See, there's a solitary, big, bunchy tree with lovely branches and standing out in front of you. 4 is?
Door.
You do have it, Chris. That's good. 4 is a door. Make it a nice ornate door with a doorknob that your hand is reaching out to turn to see what is there. 5 is?
Hive, as in a beehive.
That's right. See a big beehive with bees buzzing in and out of this thing, and you're in danger of being stung if you get too close. 6?
Sick.
Yes,
Imagine
sick.
yourself vomiting,
6
or somebody
is
else.
Sick. Someone in a hospital bed on an IV cart, IV lead sitting on a gurney, a cart, and throwing up. It's horrible, but it's an image you will not forget. 6 is sick. 7.
Heaven.
7 is heaven. You put big pearly gates with people like angels and that behind the gates, and a big rainbow over it all and make it bright and shiny, and the gates are open. And 9?
No, you skipped 8.
Oh, did I?
Yes, 7 is heaven. 8, and because you say
it's
the gates,
gate.
it always
That's right.
it always screws me up because 8 is gate.
Okay, well, I haven't done this in about 400 years. So 8 is gate. Yeah, so 7 is heaven, 8 is gate. So
Different gates.
Yeah, different gates. What I do for this is I do a garden gate, like a little white picket fence, like set in a hedge with a gate that opens the little latch, a small thing, not this big enormous heaven in front of me.
Not Bill Gates and the gaffer tape that he sends you every night.
No, not Bill Gates and the piece of gaffer tape he sends to me several times a week that is called an update for my Windows 7, and my machine is crashing endlessly. Thank you. I'd like to fight him in the frickin' octagon, man.
All right, and we're on
to 9.
9 is
You're really
wine.
good at pattern interrupt. Wine, yes. And when you think of wine, think of a big bottle of wine with a glass beside it, and someone knocks it over onto the table, and it spills all over everything, all over the tablecloth. And 10 is?
Den. Like
den.
A fox's den.
A fox's den, okay. So we see like a den of an animal dug into the ground, and you can hear it growling from inside this den and see some of the rough, coarse bedding that it's lying on without actually seeing the animal. You want to keep going?
Let's see. Let's see how far I can go, because it goes up to 20. At least you teach it on the
let's
CD.
stop at 10.
All right.
Okay. So here's 10 things. So what's 6?
Sick.
Yes. 4.
Door.
Right. 7.
Heaven.
8.
Gate.
Okay. So we got all these. Now you set up this thing. So let's say someone writes down numbers 1 to 10 on a piece of paper. And they say, okay, you say pick 10 objects and write them beside the list.
Yeah.
So when they read you the first object is crayon. And you say, what colors? And they say red.
Red crayon.
So 1 is a gun. So all I see is a red crayon firing in slow motion out of the barrel of the gun when the person pulls the trigger.
That's exactly what I do.
Make it vivid and clear. Takes only a second or 2.
Yeah, just imagine the red Crayola crayon is the bullet.
Right, exactly.
Spinning.
No brand name, so let it that out.
Yeah.
Then what's 2? 2 is a shoe. So the person says, you haven't told them your list you're using in the background. You're just asking for numbers 1 to 10 and something at each one. And they can say them out of order. It's irrelevant. So they say number 2, and they hold up a cup. It says white mug sitting on the desk that you just heard me put down.
Right.
So shoe. So I see this white mug sitting inside this stinky shoe, and I'm thinking, boy, I wouldn't want to drink from that now. And that makes it even clearer. And they say, okay, we'll give you number 7. Number 7 is a CD. Now 7 is heaven. So I see a CD rolling and right into heaven, and all the angels cheering as the CD rolls in and everyone applauds.
With Stairway to Heaven playing.
Stairway to Heaven is the CD.
Yeah, no, I'll point out here that however Mike is describing what he would choose isn't going to line up with you. And that's the whole
individuality
the whole thing.
of it.
Whatever comes to mind for you, your specific choice is going to be what's best for you.
Right. This is just the individuality of it makes it very, very simple for you. So then they get, they go through the whole list, and 10 is a den. It's an animal's den, and it's a computer monitor, let's say. They tell you, and you're seeing the animal's den, and you're seeing the monitor sticking out of the animal's den, and someone's tried to force it in so the screens become cracked. Oh. And you're making it vivid, and you're annoyed that it's cracked. So then when they say to you, okay, an hour later over dinner, what's number 4? And you immediately answer. They say, what's number 2? And you see the shoe with the cup in it, and you say, oh, it's a cup. Now, don't say shoe.
When you asked me 4, I'm like, Dora, we didn't do that one yet.
So you don't say, oh, it's a shoe. You say, no, it's a cup.
Yeah.
They say, what's number 1? You see the red Crayola crayon firing out of the gun. And you'll have it as long as you need to. After that, it'll fade. Mm-hmm. Now, this is a basic method for 10 objects. You can go up to 20 quite easily. This, 15 is lifting. 15 is lifting. It's a weightlifter lifting the object. 14 is courting. It's a man courting a woman, walking down, hand in hand, a very old-fashioned.
17 is
leavening. It's yeast worked into it. A woman working yeast into it. Anyway, so the point is,
18 is
this is the
waiting.
Waiting.
18 is waiting.
18 is waiting. It is. It's a woman sitting on a park bench with her hands folded, keeps looking at her watch, and there's a space on the bench beside her, and that's where you put the object. So it's really, really easy to do. This is a peg system. You have 10 or 20 pegs that you can hang things on. Now, if you're doing something like a grocery list, and you don't want to memorize, you don't have to know that it's number 4 or number 16. Order. You don't need any sequence. You just need a list. In that case, you simply link them together, and that is far, far easier. So for item number 1, it's a crayon, Crayola crayon. So I have a Crayola crayon and make it big in my mind. The second one, number 2, is the mug, the white mug that's on the table here that you just heard me put down again. So the mug is number 2. I imagine the crayon and grabbing it in my fist, it's so big, and writing all over this mug with red crayons.
That's what my kids would do, and that's exactly what I imagined as well.
And that's how you continue with your list. And if the next one was the CD, we imagine someone crushing the CD up so it fits inside the mug. So the crayon takes you to the mug, takes you to the CD, and you link them all together. So the first method is the peg method. It's a means of hanging things on pegs, pure Bernard Zufall. And the second method is the link method, where you're just connecting them all to each other. Now, once you connect them to each other, you can have a near infinite, of course, there's no such thing.
Yeah.
Because you can always multiply infinity by infinity and be much larger, but you can make a long list. Just link them together.
I think I said that when the order is not important. When you are using the linkage method, you do get the order. It's just that you're not going to necessarily be able to easily recall
what's number 5.
Yeah. The naming, the number.
You won't have the number of each one, but they will be in the order you give them, and likewise the reverse order.
Yes.
If I see CD crushed, I go, oh, where is it? Oh, it's in the mug. That's the one before it. What's wrong with the mug? Oh, it's covered with that crayon. I'm just going backwards. Mm-hmm. And it's just as easy to run the other direction, provided you make them large, colorful, vivid, add action, add sound if you want. Do what works for you. Take long enough to focus on it. And you will find it quite easy to do. In fact, next week, when we do the podcast, we will look at the number memorization system. I'll show you how to memorize
the phonetic alphabet.
Really long numbers after hearing them just once.
We're going to have to do another podcast on a part 2 of memory, I think, because we are running
we will do that.
But that's cool. 1 to 20 is explained in full detail on the Memory Power CD, which is available on the website.
Plus, the Memory Power CD has half an hour of hypnosis built in, as well as the half hour of training, so that it intensifies your learning and your memory skills through just listening to the CD hypnosis track. Now, remember, this is mnemonics. Mnemonics. It's not mnemonics, as morons tend to say. Mnemonics is pertaining to the lungs. It is mnemonics, which is pertaining to memory.
Like not pneumonia.
Correct.
Mnemonics. Okay, good. And I also want you to, on the part 2, I want you to talk about remembering names, because you have you teach this also on the CD, but there's a really cool way you have of remembering names, because I don't know how many people are like me out there that hi, I'm John, you shake their hand, and immediately you're thinking about what you're going to say or how you're going to introduce the...
We will do that too. So next week we'll look at memorization of names when you meet people, so you can meet a room full of people, as Harry Lorraine did for years. Harry Lorraine basically, as far as I know, took Bernard Zufall's method and elaborated on it. He was the memory man for years. Then Jerry Lucas took it from him, and everybody just sort of got the original system. I'm not saying they stole it. I just mean they used it as well and did a very good job with it in many cases.
Yeah, and I'll say, listen, if people are recycling the same material throughout history, it's because it works. Yeah, there's a reason.
Okay, so make note, Chris. Maybe I'll put it in my iPhone 5.
Or just remember it.
Yeah, or just remember it, that we are going to do names, memorizing names, and we'll also do the phonetic alphabet next time, as well as other stuff.
We'll wrap up and then we'll hit Q&A as well, because I did have some... If we got through this faster, I was going to throw some Q&A in, but we'll have to save it for podcast
because of all our brilliantly funny side comments.
Yes, 34. All right, so with that said, would you like to offer the empowering question?
Listeners, I'm fighting a bit of a cold, but we will get to that. My voice being full and glanative and fulsome and wholesome as it is now. I'm starting to sound more like Barry White. Listen, here's your empowering question. Let me give you the foundation for this, which is a bit unusual. If you get something like a sore on your arm, and if you do not treat the underlying cause so the sore goes away and put a Band-Aid on it, you'll discover that the sore will continue to grow, which will then necessitate removing the Band-Aid. Seeing the suppuration is continuing, you will then apply a larger Band-Aid. And thinking you have solved the problem, it will continue to get worse and more painful, and the infection will grow. And over time, when you remove the Band-Aid and see that it is now, the sore is creeping past the edges of the new Band-Aid, you're going to get an industrial size one and stick that on. And if you are not careful, this sore, ulcer, whatever it is, will continue to grow, and the lesion will eventually take over your entire body. My question to you today is this, and let this resonate. What is it that you keep putting a larger Band-Aid on instead of treating it at cause? What is it you keep putting a larger Band-Aid on without the problem going away? What is it you need to treat at the causative element instead of increasingly large dressings to try to cover it?
That is a very, very good question. I love the visual, the little mental movie that I have to make to notice this. It's a very good metaphor. All right, let's go then. We have closing metaphor time.
This is an interesting one, Chris, because it was one of the very few occasions in my life I was able to make a rightful medical diagnosis without being present. In the 1970s, I'm suspecting this was around 1979, my wife's grandmother had a heart condition, and she was hospitalized in Scarborough General Hospital for this heart condition, which eventually, unfortunately, turned into pulmonary edema and her lungs filled up with fluid and she died. But while she was hospitalized, she developed on the calf of her leg, close to the shin, a weeping sore. And not wanting to fall into the increasingly larger dressing, she just looked after this thing and cleaned it and put stuff on. And when she was in hospital, they looked at this and she brought it to their attention, even though she was there for an entirely different problem. And they put antiseptics on and corticosteroids and so on. And they just could not trace the cause of this. It continued to weep and continued to run. And I didn't see it. She told her mother, who was my wife's mother, about it. And my wife told me and said, my grandmother's in the hospital with this thing on her shin or her leg, and it's getting worse and worse, and kept describing it to me and said it's a mystery. And I had just read a book, talk about synchronicity or fortuitousness, a few months before, of British prisoners of war held by the Japanese in the South Pacific fell prey to something called tropical ulcers. And tropical ulcers are, I guess, bacteriological in nature. I'm not certain, but I knew the way they treated them was very simply with potassium permanganate, which you will know from your chemistry. It's purple crystals,
yes,
which leave a brown stain, and they would paint potassium permanganate on, and it was an absolute cure for tropical ulcers. And I told my wife about this. She told her mother, and her mother said to her grandmother, just say this to the doctor: could it be a tropical ulcer? And see what he says. Well, naturally, the doctor came in, checked her electrocardiogram, lifted the dressing to look at her leg, the internist, and he said, it's not seeming to get any better. And she said, could it be a tropical ulcer? And he said, have you been to the tropics? And she said, well, not exactly, but we stayed in the south of Florida for some time recently. He said, I think we're going to try potassium permanganate. And in a matter of days, it had disappeared.
Thanks for tuning in again to Brain Software with Dr. Mike Mandel. This has been session number 33, and we will be back on session 34. We'll finish the memory discussion. It's going to be awesome. You are not going to want to miss that one. You're going to want to be there. So keep in mind, go to the website, MikeMandelHypnosis.com/class if you want to sign up for the July 8th through 12th, Monday to Friday, 5-day intensive architecture of hypnosis course. Email us at info@mikemandelhypnosis.com if you would like to be on the early bird list to register for the September 7th handwriting analysis course. That's one full day on a Saturday. And please leave a rating for the show over at iTunes.
Thanks once again for tuning in. We do love hearing from you. I promise my voice will be glanative by the next podcast.
As will mine.
I was speaking to my wife Eileen the other day, and I said to her, I really like in this podcast. I think it's very nice. That's why I like it, because it's so nice. And, you know, when we were growing up, there was a lad round the corner from us. He was quite a funny lad. He was one of the tiddlywinks that he was playing with it all the time, never quite got it. Monday, wide awake now.